Hello again. Welcome back to Just Add Wood, or welcome for the first time to Just Add Wood. I'm Chad, and if you haven't seen any of my other shed organizing videos, feel free to do so. There's a lawn and garden tool wall on the right. On the left, there's a lumber rack built out of 2x4s and EMT conduit. And on the back wall, just out of the frame there up above, is a loft. And that's not me tripping over all of the scraps I'm trying to use in building these projects and doing this organization. I wanted to make an effort to use up as much of my scraps as possible. And I have lots of construction scraps because I built a covered patio, and in all these other videos you can see how I would come by a lot of scraps. So what I'm doing here is measuring the back wall, which is about 12 foot in total, and I want about an 8-foot workbench slash shelf with a shorter shelf above it, and that's going to leave about 4 feet to hang a couple of bicycles on the left. Always start by squaring up the ends of your lumber because the lumber almost never comes square. Oddly enough, the other end of this lumber was square, so I'm going ahead and cutting it down to the length I want to make my workbench. I do want the workbench to end on a stud, so my workbench may be plus or minus 8 feet. Because I'm never going to finish the inside of this shed, and I'm never going to add trim to the inside of this door jamb, I can go ahead and make my shelf come out to almost all the way to the end of the door opening. So I'm going to go ahead and push this, make this as deep as possible, and it's at a predetermined height. I've already made my marks along the wall at about 35 inches high. That's a particular number because although I'm not going off of any plans and I'm really shooting from the hip here, that particular number has to be because I anticipate putting some things underneath the shelf that are a little taller, and so I need that particular height to make that happen. So I've already drawn on the walls at that height with the length and the depth measured out. I'm going to go ahead and cut out all of the 2x4 braces that'll be in the middle and sort of sandwiched in between a ledger board and an outer board, kind of in a ladder configuration. I'm sure that's not what this type of carpentry is called, but it looks like a ladder. So I'm going to cut out all the 2x4 blocks for the middle, and then I'm going to lay them out. I'm just going to stand them up on the floor, kind of along the studs there, until I can get that top board on and get it nailed into place. After I nailed both ends into place, I realized I was one 2x4 short for the middle. So I'm going to go ahead and mark and cut out one more 2x4 here. And with that 2x4 in place, I can get them all nailed where I want them. And I am nailing these where they do not line up with the studs, because when I hang this ledger board on the wall, I want to have clear nailing to the studs, so I don't want any of my cross braces to get in the way. And then I can flip it over and I can add the top board. And I am going to go ahead and mark where these cross braces need to lay out so that they're all perpendicular to each other and perfectly square. Once I'm done with the layout, I can get this top board nailed into place as well. I'm using a pneumatic nailer here, certainly not required. It's just a Harbor Freight framing nailer, but it's been super convenient other than the noise of a compressor. It's been super easy to use. You could use screws or hand pound nails in just as easily. On the right side, it's going to be nailed to the studs along the door. On the left side, it's going to need a leg. So I'm just building a leg here. Now I can get this thing hoisted into place, nailed to the studs, and install the leg. Same applies to the upper shelf. It's just a rinse and repeat of the bottom shelf, only it's not quite as deep. So the bottom shelf turned out to be just shy of 32 inches deep. So I want to use one sheet of plywood. They're 48 inches wide, so that leaves about a 16-inch upper shelf, so that I can use one sheet of plywood to cover both of these. Here I'm just putting the plywood in place temporarily and getting it oriented right. I had the ugly side up, so I want the pretty side up. So I flipped it over, and then I'm just going to cut off the excess. And once the excess is cut off, I am going to go ahead and trim out around the studs using the jigsaw so that I can slide the shelf all the way back against the wall so there's no gap between the shelf and the wall. And I'm going to do this for both the upper and the lower shelves. Once I've marked where the studs are, I'm just going to use a skill saw to start the cuts and then a jigsaw to finish them up. Nice. Alright, loft, shelf, and workspace all on one side. This little corner is going to be a potting area for my wife. I'm going to give her a workspace, give her a few shelves, and have a space for the lawnmower to slide under in the orientation that it is now. I'm sort of torn between the sizes I want and the sizes of the scraps I have left. You know, this is an exercise in using up all of my leftover construction scraps. So I'm sort of in between the sizes I can use and the sizes I want. So the sizes and the spaces that I'm creating are sort of dictated by the pieces of material that I have left. But this procedure is going to be the same for a lot of the other stuff I've built. I'm just going to add a ledger board to the wall, nail it off to the studs, build a little skeleton frame, and then cover it in OSB or plywood. Once I figured out how large I can make this workspace, time to nail the ledger boards to the wall. Just double checking that I've made everything nice and square. And finally adding a leg for some support. Lawnmower still fits underneath it, which is great. I also add a little bit of extra clearance above what would be the gas tank on a normal lawnmower because I anticipate upgrading this electric lawnmower later this year, going back to a gas. I'm going to add some block shelves here in between the studs, and I'm also going to add some corner shelves by adding a little bit of brackets or blocking along the studs to allow the shelf to sit on it. After giving it a couple of DIY dad pats to make sure it's nice and secure and not going anywhere, I'm going to add a few screws from the top, and these shelves are done. Same procedure here. I'm just going to hold the shelf up against the studs, mark where they need to be cut out around the studs so it slides back into the wall and there's no gap between the shelf and the wall, and then screw it on. The only difference is I'm going to add a couple of diagonal braces underneath because it's not a corner shelf. And once I confirm it fits, I'm just going to use the first one as a template to cut out the second one. Remember, measure twice and cut once, especially as the further we get and the more scarce these scraps become. I think one more shallow shelf across the top ought to do it. It'll be a little tall. We'll need a step stool or a ladder to reach it, but that's okay because we're storing both ladders and step stools in this very shed. So it should work out just fine. All right. Potting station is complete. Time to move on. We've got shelves, corner shelves, straight shelves, a potting area, a shelf, and a place for a lawnmower. Good to go. Let's talk about this area on the side of the workbench now. I'd really like to put 2 mountain bikes vertical, so I'm gonna hang them from the loft. What I did is I guesstimated, and I hope I left ample space. We have a little over 3.5 feet from the end of the workbench to the wall, and I'm just gonna measure from the handlebar, half the handlebar, over to the center of the neck, which is about 13 3/4 inches. So I'm gonna go 14 inches. See if I can get the tape measure right. I'm gonna go up here to the loft joist that I want, and I'm gonna mark 14 inches and drill a hole and mount a hook. Let's see how it does. Very nice. Very nice. Looks good enough. I'm gonna do it again. Here's hook number 2. That's perfect. One upside down, one right side up. Free floating, not bumping each other. Perfect storage. Well, not quite perfect. Almost perfect. I did need to add a piece of wood to the bottom for the tires to rest on. I didn't want them resting on the inside of the exterior wall. So now it's perfect. Okay, well that about wraps it up as my son and I load this shed full of the contents of my 2-car garage, which if you'll recall, or if you've seen any of my other videos, all of these other projects are an effort to empty out my 2-car garage of all non-essential stuff so that I can turn it into a wood shop, into a makerspace. And this shed goes a long way towards that, especially now with a loft and a workbench and a potting bench and a lawn and garden tool wall, and a lumber rack will be on the left. I'll be able to turn my 2-car garage into a makerspace now. So thank you so much for watching. It's been so much fun making these videos and these little construction projects, and now hopefully I'll get to move forward with some woodworking stuff and some workshop stuff, some slat wall and some workbenches and miter stations. Oh my. Thank you for watching. Please leave a comment, a like, a subscribe. I think you can do all of that stuff below, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you.